Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner, Derek Piper live at State Farm Center. And no offense to Rutgers, which is a team I really enjoy watching, especially just how tough they play. Steve Pikiell's built a good thing there. But when Darren Williams and Manny Jackson are in the building, Derek, you can't lose. And Illinois found a way, overcome an 8-point deficit in the first half, go on a 19-0 run. And I don't know if I've ever seen this before, a Big Ten team get shut out from scoring for 10 minutes. That was an impressive defensive display from a team that is one of the most impressive defensive teams we've seen. And Derek, what a big win as Illinois gets a quad one victory at home. And for the first time this season, they beat a top half Big Ten team. We'll see if Michigan State ends up that, but right now that is one of their best wins of the season, beating Rutgers. But something you got to do at home, especially if you want to get one of those double byes in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, it was a big spot for Illinois going into today, and a team you now leap there in that top 5, top 6 of the Big Ten. Rutgers now falling just a hair below you, and we'll see how the rest of the weekend shakes out, because what's cool about this weekend is you have the top 6 teams all playing each other. So Illinois getting an important win at home. You mentioned the quad one. Going into today, they'd only had one quad one win in Big Ten play, so you had another one in that sense. And I know on KenPom, Indiana was slightly trailing Rutgers as far as the KenPom rankings going into today. So Rutgers on paper was the best team you'd played since Texas. So, which is kind of crazy. So to be able to hold on to the fort at home is really important. You still have a chance to match what's been your Big Ten home record in the 3 previous seasons, which has been 8-2 in each of the last 3, currently 5-2 here. So I took a couple losses early, but I've rattled off some wins here. This was a big one. The defensive intensity in the second half was great. They weren't very good there in the first half. I think came way too easy for Rutgers offensively. It was kind of one of the weird first halves, because it felt like Illinois should be down by a lot more than 4 points when you factor in like Shannon and Meyer combined for 1 field goal, and Illinois had some mishaps with their defensive breakdowns, their turnovers. It just started ugly for them, but there in that second half, they really clicked into place, and Brad rolled with a defensive lineup that he loved, which included Sincere Harris and Ty Rogers. Coleman Hawkins did a really good job of slowing down Paul Mulcahy. So we saw why Illinois is one of the best defensive squads, not only in the Big Ten, but nationally. You mentioned right before we hopped on here, 15th in the country now, defensive efficiency. That's big time, and they can really contest around the rim. And Rutgers, they've had a really good season. They've got some talented players. Amore didn't have his best game. Dane deserves a lot of credit for that. But one of my worries about them in the NCAA tournament is things can get really rocky for them offensively, and we saw it to a drastic measure today with 11-plus minutes or 10-plus minutes without a point.
Yeah, I think that's the fun of watching these head-to-head matchups, right? I mean, Indiana just punked Illinois on its home court. And it's like, okay, how do they respond? And Illinois has responded pretty dang well, right? They beat Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and then you go to Iowa, and I thought that was a pretty evenly matched game, but Illinois just couldn't stop fouling. Like, I thought for the most part, Illinois might have actually played better in that game, but they just couldn't stop fouling. And you tip your cap to Tony Perkins, who made those mid-range jumpers. Today, you lived with those mid-range jumpers. I looked at you and Caleb McConnell was making all these shots, and I'm like, I like the way that's going. They got to stop, some of these other guys from getting easy looks at the rim. We'll dive into what Dane did against Cliff Omarui today, but what they did in the second half, and I think what they did offensively in the second half also shows you why Illinois, I think, is a better team than Rutgers. They have guys who can go get buckets. They have an offense that is capable of going 4 for 8 from 3 in the second half. Illinois actually shot the ball well for a half from 3, going 4 for 8 in the second half. They just have guys who can go get them one, whether it's Meyer, whether it's Hawkins with his putback attempts, whether it's, Terrence Shannon had a big second half with 12 points, and seeing that aggression from him within the flow of the offense, I thought was great. 15 points on 7 shots. They made 2 threes in rhythm, less of the kind of isolation buckets for him. So I think that was the difference today. Is Illinois is just a more talented offensive team, but both these teams are really good defensively. But Illinois is just more well-rounded. That's why I like Illinois' chances compared to Rutgers once you get into the NCAA tournament, and why I like them more as we go into the Big Ten play. Because I didn't love Geo Baker all the time, Derek, but because he was inefficient, kind of reminds you of Boo Buie. But that's what Rutgers is missing, is that one guy when you're going through an offensive drop that can just get you a bucket to make it a 6-0 run instead of a 19-0 run.
Yeah, Illinois has far more dynamic players offensively. And you look at Illini just now cracking the top 50 offensive efficiency. Rutgers has been outside of the top 100 for pretty much the entirety of this season. They struggled to shoot the three, and Illinois did a great job today of containing Cam Spencer. I thought Jaden Epps on him was really good. But as far as Illinois offensively, they worked through Dane early, which was good. I wondered how he would perform. Now it's a different test. Like, it's not the level of Trace Jackson Davis. I thought Amori was the best big Illinois has seen outside of TJD, but for Dane to score as well as he did against one of the better post defenders, at least in the Big Ten, in Amori, who's got size at 6'11", he's very athletic, long arms. Dane played with a lot of confidence today and showed why when he's going like that, he can be one of the better bigs in the conference as well. And coming off a game 17-9 at Iowa, put up 15 today and 7. I thought he was spectacular, and I think that getting Amori in foul trouble was a big deal too, because if there's something Rutgers can maybe go to when they get in some offensive ruts, it is trying to throw it into Amori. But with his foul trouble, that certainly hurt them. And I think that there you saw in the second half, Shannon got going finally. I think he stopped trying to hunt some calls. I think that's been one thing that he's gotten a little too caught up in. Now, I think he's tried to go into contact, but it's a hard sell sometimes when the ref knows you're trying to maybe show the contact more than actually finish the shot. He got downhill a little bit. He made some of those pull-up threes, which is good.
Jump stops.
Yeah.
I love jump stops. Even for a guy that's that good, can get that vertical. Sometimes he just goes too much at the rim, makes himself shorter than he is. But he had a jump stop, finished in the lane. Like, those things I think you're starting to see a little bit more from Terrence Shannon. We'll get into the freshman, Derek. I want to get into who I thought was the star of the game as well. But let's bring up Dane Danger.
Yeah.
I mean, he outplayed Cliff Omarui, which is not easy. I had Omarui on my all Big Ten third team last year. Like, he is just, you see him up close and you're like, wow, that's what they look like. He's going to have a chance in the NBA as just a rim runner. He's limited offensively, obviously, but he gives so much effort, so much energy. He's such a freak athlete. And to get him in foul trouble was huge. Dane drew 3 fouls. I think at least 2 of them were on Cliff Omarui. Cliff had a really bad one, 90 feet from the basket, that I'm sure Steve Pike will talk about, that limited him in the second half. But when Omarui gets 14 and 10 and Danger gets 15 and 7, I feel pretty good about how Illinois is going to stack up. But we're now, a year, most of the year into the Dane Danger experience. Derek, you brought it up. I mean, how would we stack him among Big Ten bigs? Obviously, you got a couple All-Americans in Edey and Trace Jackson Davis, but it feels like Illinois might have a top half big man. And in a post-Kofi Coburn era, that's impressive given all the other pieces you've had. So Dane Danger has been a huge bright spot all season, and it feels like the more he plays, because this is basically his freshman year, the more comfortable and the more confident he's become.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say above average big man for sure when you go outside of the group of TJD and Edey. I know that Rebrach has been very productive. I'd probably take Dane, I think, for the most part. Julian Reese was thought to be a breakout guy. He's had a solid year, but I think that Dane's overall been a little bit more productive probably. And Zed Key, would you take Dane over him?
Yes.
Probably.
I mean, Hunter, obviously I would take Hunter, guys.
Yep.
But Trace, Hunter, Edey.
Take him over Stephen Crowell?
Yes. I would take Cliff. I know he just beat Cliff today, but I would take Cliff. Julian Reese is an interesting one. It's a different kind of big, but Julian Reese, I love the idea of. But I mean, we're not like, that's top half and potentially top 6, top in discussion for top 5 big man in the Big Ten. Like, that's really impressive. And I don't think either of us were thinking Dane Danger would be that in year 1. And the fact that you can build on that going into the future with multiple years of him is huge for this program, but huge for this team, because we thought, could they match up against a team like Rutgers? Could they match up with a team like Indiana? They couldn't. Like Purdue, they can't probably. But teams like Michigan, Rutgers, Maryland, yeah, you got a chance.
For sure. Yeah, and like you said there, in his first season, and a guy that was, as we come back to many times, very talented coming out of high school, had a lot of natural scoring ability. It just was getting him into shape. I mean, when he came here mid-year last year, he was not in good shape, and even in the limited minutes he played at Baylor, it showed that he had a long ways to go to be able to get into a spot of being really productive at this level. And then just to play this type of competition and try to adjust to playing in the Big Ten and now to be someone that's stacking some consistency and as confident as he is. I mean, he's uber confident offensively. And we've talked about, what his length has been able to do defensively as well. It's been a part of why Illinois has been one of the best 2-point field goal defenses out there. So, and to be able to build on this and have 2 more years of him is outstanding. I think he is good in that pinch post area as you put him in the spread, as long as he just doesn't try to overdo things. Like, he is someone that can really handle it and be a little fancy at times. But I think we saw like a pass to Jaden Epps on a back cut. I think that's something that can really even open up more for him. It's kind of, I think Underwood's talked about this, kind of understanding some of the intricacies of the game still for someone that is still fairly new to college basketball that can even further his game more. But we know that he's got the power. We know he's got the touch around the basket. And it's been a huge asset for Illinois. A guy that was coming off the bench early, and we didn't know. Maybe he'd play 15 minutes a game. Maybe he'd be we kind of talked about what he played like a Georgie role. Now he's a little bit more of a focal point. I mean, logging 30 minutes tonight, and I think he was in that range against Iowa too. That's a lot more than you would have thought coming into this year.
Yeah, let's be honest. He was kind of a small school killer early in the season, but during conference play, he's averaging 24 minutes, and that's going up. 9.4 points, 6.2 rebounds, and he's got 18 blocks in 13 games. So there are things he can get better at too. So yeah, I mean, whether we're putting him 5, 6, or 7, I got him as a top half Big Ten big man. I don't know if we thought Illinois would have that coming into the year. So that's been huge. All right, this guy could be a little bit of a roller coaster, and he was even in this game. But the star of the game today was Coleman Hawkins. He was the best player on the court. 5 turnovers today, too much. But just offensively, Derek, he created so much effort on the glass. I think that has been so consistent for him, and he's getting putbacks. He did settle for a few threes today, but I think about more than half of his threes were better shots today, made one of them, but just kind of took things off the bounce a little bit more. But in a game where you had kind of 2 players, Mulcahy and Hawkins, who do some similar things offensively, I thought Hawkins was more impactful on that end. And then obviously he's a big part of what they do defensively and on the glass. So Coleman, you see again why NBA teams are interested in him, why he's so important for this team, because when he's good, this team's capable of some big things.
Right. And early in that second half, after, going into halftime right beforehand, Mulcahy was starting to hurt you there in that ball screen action, kind of pulling up in the mid-range, hit a 3. And they made a pivot to put Coleman on him and to challenge him with his length. And obviously he's got the mobility too. And you see the versatility defensively, and he can even come over and help and be able to challenge shots. I mean, him and Ty did a really good job, and Terrence too. There was a real great contest there in transition, but Coleman was a big part of locking in defensively. And I fully agree. Like his consistent rebounding effort is really something that's been very encouraging. It just seemed like that kind of permeated throughout his game. 5
offensive rebounds today.
Yeah. And that's a big deal. And coming off a game where he goes 0 for 7 from the field, and he still takes some 30-footers or close to it. I don't know why he's fallen in love with that shot. And sometimes, like right at the line, he doesn't like it. But he did make a big 3 kind of as the game started to turn there in that second half, and provide a nice offensive spark. I mean, there was a stretch he scored like 10 of 12 or something like that. Had a right hook. He kind of scored there in that mid range. Sometimes he's hesitant, but it was another one of those games. We brought it up on the pod before. I think I was doing the math. 12-1 when Coleman has a offensive rating of 100 or better on KenPom, and some people might be like, "Well, what does 100 mean?" It's like when he's shooting more efficiently, when his assisted turnover is more decent. Like even though he had 5 turnovers, he did have 4 assists, so that kind of boosted it up. When Coleman is good or better offensively, Illinois usually wins those games.
Here's something we don't talk about enough. This guy barely comes off the court. I'm just going to read you since January 4th, the Northwestern game. Here's his minutes: 36, 33, 35, 36. Only played 17 in a rout at Minnesota, got in foul trouble. Indiana 38, Ohio State 37, Wisconsin 34, Nebraska 35, Iowa 35, Rutgers 37. Brad Underwood doesn't take him off the court for a reason. He's so impactful. And I don't think we got to reiterate that over and over again, but sometimes I do, because he's so important to what this team accomplishes, Derek. Like, so is Matthew Meyer. So, I mean, so are all the guys that play, but he just does so much of everything. But man, these freshmen are easy to love, aren't they? Ty Rodgers is just such a joy to watch right now. 7 rebounds in 18 minutes, played great defense, had an impressive block. And Sincere Harris came into the game, Derek. I wrote this down here. He came into the game with 15 minutes left. Illinois was down 5. He didn't get taken off the court for 10 minutes. He left the court. Illinois was up 13. He was great. 5 points, hit the first 3 of the game. He's one of their best 3-point shooters. Go figure. But he had 2 steals, 1 block, just great energy. And I got to give Jaden Epps credit here too. He's been fantastic defensively. Jaden Epps and Sincere Harris took Cam Spencer out of this game. 2 points on 1 for 5 shooting. He only attempted 1 3. Like I talked about, Rutgers needs somebody that can make shots, go get a bucket. Cam Spencer would be that guy. He only took 5 shots and only 1 3. That's going to win you a game.
For sure. I know that like synergy defensive numbers aren't perfect because they don't account for maybe who you're matched up against and also like shots that aren't taken. But Jaden and Ty are 2 of your highest. I think your 2 highest graded out defenders on this team. And I mean, you can see why. Like Jaden really hounds the ball and off the ball too. Like with his quickness, he's pretty stout for a freshman as far as his ability to be physical. And he's made a lot less defensive mistakes than what we saw earlier in the season. He can stick to shooters. He can fight through ball screens. He does that very well. Speaking of which, obviously, Sincere is really tough to get by, and he just hounds you. And he has that unrelenting motor. He's tough, and I know that there's some times offensively where it takes some shots to kind of make you hold your breath or whatever. But, yeah, the 3 that he made was – someone had to make one. I mean, someone had to break the seal, and who knew Sincere Harris was going to do it. But, I mean, his 3-point percentage hasn't been terrible. It's in the 30s, right, on the season.
Yeah, I was angry when he didn't take one in transition and then ended up being a bad shot towards the end of it. But, yeah, I mean, those guys, it's rare for freshmen to bring it like that. But, man, you see why we were so excited about Ty Rodgers, why the staff was so excited about Ty Rodgers. But Jaden Epps' growth defensively, the way he's fought through screens, Sincere he's a skinny guy. Right. But he's shown a lot of toughness about fighting through screens. And those guys did it when other guys couldn't. Illinois and that pick and roll defense was awful in the first half. And those guys really turned the game. And how many times have we said, Derek, Sincere Harris and Ty Rodgers now put in that group change games defensively? Like runs are brought about. Like Illinois wasn't fantastic offensively during that run. They only scored 19 points in 10 minutes. Like that's good, but not great. It's the defense, and Sincere Harris changed the UCLA game, changed the Nebraska game with Ty Rodgers, right? Like those guys keep making that kind of impact, and that's what gives this team a high floor is what they do defensively, and those guys are a huge part of it right now.
Yeah, and that trio, you knew coming in, they're going to bring grit, they're going to bring toughness, heightened athleticism, versus kind of what Illinois has had in the past. In some ways, definitely. You look at Sincere, Ty, I mean, Jaden's even a pretty solid athlete as well. So to be able to lock in defensively, which usually you don't talk about as something that freshmen do a whole lot of. I mean, that's kind of a lot of times what keeps freshmen off the floor is their defensive mistakes, or maybe it's just inconsistent energy and focus. Younger players, I know Brad talks a lot about, like younger players tie their mentality, kind of who they identify themselves as, to shot making and offense. And but it's been great to see those guys do that. And Ty, I mean, at the very least, he's like a souped up version of DeMonte. I mean, the jump shot that DeMonte added later in his career obviously would be a difference than Ty, but like his ability to sky for rebounds, his ability to really get after you, like the way he hounded McConnell, who kind of surprised me with how he had it going offensively early, but that shut down there in the second half. Ty was, I mean, he was just a sight to see going up for boards and the type of just toughness and energy he gave to that end.
Yeah, sometimes you got to remind yourself of how different this team looks this year. And that was the whole idea, right? But like last year you had Kofi and a bunch of guys who couldn't really get up besides Coleman, a bunch of short guys usually for their position. And now you're, besides Jaden Epps, you're long, you're at every position, you're athletic. When you got Ty out there, Coleman out there, Meyer out there. Meyer did not have a good game. Ended up with 8 points and 8 rebounds. At least gave you energy on the glass, but some of those shots were bad. But sometimes Terrence takes your breath away, man, with some of his rebounds today, some of his block shots, 3 blocks for Terrence today. Like, I was really encouraged by Terrence Shannon's second half because I felt like he disappeared in that first half again. I felt like where are these guys at? You need more consistency out of him, but that's the best half I've seen from Terrence Shannon in a while, and that's going to be key. Like it's probably better for him, Derek, that he doesn't have to handle the ball all the time, handle the scoring load all the time. Like the fact that he could have 7 shots in a win over Rutgers and score 15 points. Like I'd like to get him closer to 10 shots, but I thought in that second half he took good looks. He got aggressive when he thought he should be aggressive, and he played within the flow of the offense within it all. So I thought that was a step forward for Terrence, who's settling into a little bit different role with Jaden and Matthew kind of emerging over the last month. But in the long term, that's probably a good thing for Illinois.
Yeah, they needed Terrence to have a positive come out of this game. In the last 3, averaging about 10 points, wasn't very efficient. Like I mentioned, settling for the 3 a little bit too much. And to see a couple of those go in was nice to have his confidence come back because he's a better shooter than what he's shown. Well, maybe early when he hits like 8 threes against UCLA, that was maybe a peak outside of the norm. Obviously it was for Terrence, but I mean, he's better than a 25% three-point shooter, which he's been in Big Ten play. And like catch and shoot numbers last year at Texas Tech was great. And to that point, like not having him have to create everything off the bounce. If you can let Jaden go, let Matt go, sometimes it is maybe just a kick out to Terrence. And you don't want him to fall in love with that shot because he is so gifted going downhill. It's just kind of picking and choosing his spots, but maintaining kind of that aggressiveness. Because I thought there was a time late in the half where he tried to sell a 3-point foul and airballed it. But then finally he's just like, I'm going to the teeth of the defense. I'm just putting my head down and going. You got to call it, which he's been hoping for, and then was able to score at the rim a couple of times in the second half. So good for him to pivot off of what was a rougher game. And I know even like he got subbed out early because he made a defensive mistake that Brad was upset with, but to build some momentum down the stretch and to come up big in the second half while Illinois pulled away was definitely good to see.
Only 8 players played today. One of them was Luke Goody. One of them was not RJ Melendez. Luke plays 5 minutes, got a shot up. He came in shot ready. That was for sure. But he got a shot up, didn't go in, only played 5 minutes. This is kind of what I was expecting. It's going to take him some time, get up and down the court a little bit. So I think the Minnesota game would have been massive for him just to kind of get into a rhythm, feel good about yourself. It's harder in these games. But RJ Melendez didn't play, and we found that interesting. And then Joey Wagner did a great job following up. Asked Brad Underwood, and Underwood says, violation of team rules. We don't know if he'll be out any longer, but clearly this is coming off this is a difficult time for RJ Melendez. He's in a slump. He's not playing as much as he was before, and Ty Rodgers, Sincere Harris have passed him up, and now Luke Goody could be passing him up. So what the future is for RJ Melendez, we'll find out here. But what would you make of that, Derek, both Goody and Melendez?
For RJ, it's disappointing because he's kind of compounded the issue. We don't know, obviously, what's gone on behind the scenes to make it where he's suspended for that violation. But when he's already kind of fighting it, or he's definitely fighting, I mean, he was 5 for his last 40 from 3. And like you said, the confidence has waned, and Brad hasn't played him as much while Ty has surged and while Sincere has played well. To hurt what's already kind of a tough situation definitely isn't ideal for someone that we had high expectations for going into this year, and someone that is just he's a very gifted player when you look at his athletic makeup and what he can be offensively when the shot's going. It's just been a long time since we've seen it. So that's unfortunate. Luke coming back in. I mean, you heard the crowd roar when he checks in. He's a beloved guy. He's a guy that's going to play his butt off, high IQ, and they need him to shoot. Like, I know his one miss wasn't particularly close, and he only played about 5 minutes, but to get him going and see if he can make some of those corner threes, which have been there. I mean, Illinois gotten a lot of quality shots from deep in that sense, and if Luke's taking them and he's right, then that's something that he can make at a decent clip. It's just the question of how long until his conditioning's all the way up. Is he someone that can really get it locked in defensively? Like, is his mobility up to par to be able to not be a liability there? But yeah, a little taste of a Luke Goody today, and we'll see where it goes from here. But he's someone that can help this team a lot because it's still, you look at 5 for 20 from 3 on the day, and you need to boost those numbers to be a more efficient offense.
All right, Derek. a lot of quad one opportunities coming up when you're playing good teams and you're heading out on the road. You got a lot of them, and two of them this week with Penn State and Indiana. Starts with Penn State on Tuesday. You'll be heading out to Happy Valley State College to cover that one. Penn State is in the middle of the worst stretch of their season. Phenomenal offensive team. We know, we saw it up close. They can get hot from three, but they are really ride or die with that because they are one of the worst defensive teams in the Big Ten. But obviously, Illinois looking for a little bit of revenge after being terrible defensively against Penn State. So how do you expect them to guard Jalen Pickett in the post? How do you expect them to guard all those three-point shooters?
I think having a chance to just stick Terrence Shannon on Jalen Pickett and not let Penn State just screen their way into switches to allow him to have the point guard matchup, Jaden Epps and what was Sky Clark there down low. That should make things a lot tougher for Pickett to get going. And then to not, when you're not in bad matchups, you don't have to help off shooters. Illinois has done a great job of limiting three-point attempts, of sticking to shooters on the outside. They should be much better suited to be able to contain this Penn State team, but still they have a lot of talented shot makers. It is kind of a different matchup, especially when like Miles Dredd's at the 5 and can Dane get out there and guard the three-point arc if he has it going. But then at the other end, Dane can really hurt them because they are probably – I mean, won't say the worst suited because anything that Minnesota does is terrible. But really, like roster-wise, is probably the worst suited to guard anybody that can really score on the block. And
they miss John Harrah, that's for sure.
Yeah, they definitely do. Now they'll probably double Dane and especially make Illinois try to beat them from the perimeter. But yeah, not a very good defensive team. They're very 3-point reliant. They're in desperation mode, and they were sitting there on the bubble and at one time projected in the field, but losing at Nebraska, losing at home to Wisconsin, losing to Maryland today, they got to get hot, otherwise they're going to the NIT. So a big one. They'll be playing desperate at home there in State College, but Illinois, I like the way they're trending, and they should be a much better matchup just based on kind of what they do scheme-wise and how they've been playing recently.
Yeah, Penn State right now 62 in the net. So I still think they got some work to do to get into the NIT because they are in the midst of a really, really bad stretch here. But this is a different Illinois team, as you mentioned, Derek. They guard differently, and I think this is one of the biggest probably showcases of that, of how they defend Penn State this time as opposed to what they did last time. So that's going to be fascinating to watch coming into here. But these are the kind of wins you need if you want to double bye, right? Go on the road, beat a bottom 4 Big Ten team right now, and then you go on the road at Indiana with a lot to gain. This is the separation time for a lot of these teams in the league, and this is one of Illinois' most difficult weeks of the season, but also a huge opportunity ahead because you look at this last 7 games. You got Penn State at Indiana, home against Minnesota, home against Northwestern, at a struggling Ohio State team, but that would still be a quad 1 opportunity there. Then home against Michigan, at Purdue. If you can find a way to get 4 wins there, I feel pretty good about getting a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. If you get 5, I think you're probably finishing second in the Big Ten.
I agree. Yeah, I think as you look at the next 2 road trips coming up, if you split that, you'd pretty much, for the most part, really like your next 4 when you have, Michigan, Northwestern, top echelon in terms of the Big Ten standings, Big Ten teams right now, but both at home, both games you should feel like you're the better team for sure. And then Minnesota and add an Ohio State team that's just in free fall. So I like the way that sets up. And to go to Penn State, a game that, let's be honest, you should win. You're really solidifying yourself and giving yourself a chance to lock in one of those top 4 seeds, improve your tournament stock where you could pretty much almost double up your quad 1 wins. You went in to this week with 3, and now you get 1 here today, and then get another one to Penn State, and have one that could really matter if you won at Indiana. So trying to boost that as much as possible, try to finish with the best possible finish there in the Big Ten standings, and just have the momentum trend in the right direction. Because look, ready or not, you got 3 weeks left of the regular season. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and today I think Illinois is guaranteed to end today because Michigan and Indiana are playing each other in a tie for 3rd place with Northwestern and one of Michigan and Indiana. So this is a big weekend, as you were talking about, to get some separation. But now they're all huge. But stealing one on the road next week would be huge, of course, and you can get both. Yeah, you're starting to feel really good about where this team is headed and really starting to rise in some of those rankings. Before we get out of here, Derek, let's answer a few of these comments, questions. If you have some, you can send those in, but we're going to get out of here probably within the next 5 minutes. Very impressive showing for Dane versus Cliff. Nate said, I think that's huge. But Frodog says, I still don't look like they know offense yet. That shouldn't still be happening. What would you say to that, Derek?
I think there's times where they like after Dane was rolling there in the first half and they started settling for threes, or even early on, like their first 2 buckets, Dane scores on a Morey, Coleman drives baseline and gets a dunk, and then they take a few threes and starting to settle for those type of shots. So there's still some of that, but I think that they ran some good stuff when they go on the 19-0 run, and being able to get Terrence downhill for sure. Matt settled for some today. I mean, usually you're okay with that, and I think that on the grand scale of it, you'll settle, or you'll be okay with him 1 for 6. But yeah, there's some ugly stretches for Illinois still for sure, and they can clean that up. They have some sloppy turnovers to finish with 17, and some of those deep in the backcourt especially are frustrating. But I think they've gotten, from where you were a month ago, which isn't saying a whole lot because they were a disaster offensively a month ago. They have more of an identity, but there's more consistency that they can build for sure.
They're a great defensive team. They're a mediocre offensive team. They can have times where they look terrible, Derek, but they're still not terrible because they're really good, efficient from 2. They shoot too many threes, right? Like and too many poor shot selection threes. I think is the best way to say it, because you got to shoot threes, and this team is capable of it. You just like them to shoot them in rhythm within the offense. I think that's the next step for these guys. Seneca Flint. Do we have concerns about playing a short bench? 7 guys played the whole game along with Goody's 5 minutes. I think that's kind of February and March, Derek, is most teams play 7 or 8 guys. And I think it's going to come down to who plays more minutes down the stretch, Melendez or Goody. But I think you have your 7 guys, and Rogers and Harris are a big part of that. And you'd like one of Goody or Melendez to be the other one.
Yep, you said it right there. Usually you crack that down to an 8-man rotation for the most part. Some even go a little bit shorter and go 7. And I think that the way that Luke comes back is going to say a lot. I think Ty's really established himself. I mean, Brad said today, if I want to rebound, I know exactly the guy I'm going to. So for Ty to establish that identity, that role, knowing how important defense is, because it raises, like you said, the floor, and it's just a huge staple what this team's about. Ty's going to play minutes. Sincere Energy is going to play minutes, and it does come down to kind of what version of Luke we see and the status of RJ Melendez post-suspension.
Some comments on the turnovers, Derek. 17 today is far too many. That's still a bugaboo of this team. I think they had gotten a little bit better at it, but during conference play, they're one of the highest in the Big Ten, 10th right now in turnover percentage. Didn't end up killing them today, but I think it's a big part of why Rutgers took an early lead. I forgot how many points they ended up having off turnovers, 16 points off 17 Illinois turnovers. I still think they win this game because of their defense and because of some of their offense late. But yeah, I mean, that's a weakness of this team.
Definitely. Yeah. And a lot of them are unforced. Like when there's that inbounds deep in the backcourt, and Brad was just grilling Jaden for not just going and getting the ball, and McConnell kind of, because it's a little bit of a casual inbounds, he swipes it and leads to a 3, or the team throwing each other lobs, which I would have thought lobs would be more successful than the early Brad Underwood days, the Aaron Jordan and the ones we saw way back when.
Brad today, we haven't made a lob since Kofi was here.
Yeah, this team should be better at lobs than they are, but they kind of force the issue at times, and it's just
don't have a great point guard, right? I mean, Jaden Epps is a great guard, but he's not what I would call a point guard, really.
Right.
Traditionally,
they've had the tendency to get in that mode, and even the Iowa game, I know that we focused a lot on the free throw differential. Like Illinois having twice as many turnovers as Iowa, 14-7, was part of hurting yourself as well. So they've had that knack. And I know that someone said there on the comments, we've talked about cleaning it up all year long. Like, yeah, the offense is something that just hasn't been at a above average clip in the Big Ten, and something that could hurt this team. But
listen, they got enough talent to overcome it at times, but it's a weakness. Every team in college basketball has them. I mean, Purdue doesn't have many of them, but this is one. I think we've seen Michigan State turn the ball over a lot when they've won Big Ten titles. He's got to be good elsewhere. So you do want to clean those up. It's unforced ones that bother you. Those are the ones that bother you. Brad, Illinois will lose some games they shouldn't due to the schedule. They'll run out of gas by the end of the season. I don't know if that's a comment about the Minnesota cancellation here. That's going to be 3 games in 6 days. That's difficult. Well, playing the NBA, that's what you do. But is there a game on the schedule besides Minnesota that you could say they're like games that they shouldn't lose? I mean, they've won 8 out of their last 10, Derek, and their losses are to a red hot Indiana team who looks like one of the best 15 teams in the country right now. And then at Iowa, when you followed a little bit too much, maybe you could say that you should have won that one, but you were an underdog going into that one. So there's not many games left on the schedule. I sit there and go, Illinois inconsistent, lost that game outside of the Minnesota one. These are all going to be tough. I'll include Northwestern at home because looks like an NCAA tournament team right now.
Yeah, 7 games in 3 weeks. I mean, that is stacking it up a little bit. Like you said, I mean, we have so many NBA conversations on here. Like, if you want to play in the NBA, you got to play back-to-backs and a lot more of a loaded schedule. But
I guess I don't want to veer into a load management conversation with the college basketball career.
That's actually true.
But when you have 4 in 6 days, that's part of why they probably do it.
Yeah, you can't go Kawhi Leonard here in college basketball. But I like at least how it sets up because you play Penn State, you got some time to prepare for Indiana, and let's be honest, on the heels of that Indiana game, you're going to play Minnesota, and there's
if that were even like Nebraska, it'd be a different story, right? But Minnesota's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, if it was Northwestern 2 days later, that would be really tough.
Right.
Now, I think that when you kind of stack up the fact you're going to play Indiana, Minnesota, and then Northwestern in a 6-day span, and Northwestern being at the end of that, you could have some tired legs against the Northwestern squad that obviously has already beaten you. They've been feisty. They've been able to stack up some quality wins. That could make it tougher, but not to necessarily excuse the fact that, you're in your home building, you're better than Northwestern. I would still think this team should win that game.
Brad said, "Is Ty the next Dennis Rodman?"
Someone on Twitter was like, I don't know if many players, if you made a highlight film, that most of it would be rebounding. And Dennis Rodman is the one guy that came to my mind.
Ben Wallace.
Yeah.
He's obviously not 6'11". I saw Ben Wallace in person once, man. It's just ridiculously. It's like Cliff. Cliff looks like Ben Wallace. And we'll wrap up with Jack because this is a good knack for Jaden Epps. How does Jaden Epps make every runner off the glass? Never seems like someone makes them so consistently. I was going to tell you this during the game that he plays with such great pace. Like that is something point guards that attack off the dribble. You can't just go like Terrence Shannon sometimes goes 100 miles an hour, like probably too often. Jaden does a nice job of changing pace, and he's got that quickness, and he's got strength to get to. I don't think Sincere Harris could do some of the things Jaden Epps does around the rim, just keep people on his back and have the strength to do that. So he's been phenomenal at those. He's kind of in a little bit of a 3-point slump here, but the way he attacks off the dribble is something this team certainly needs.
He's got great touch off the glass. He's got the ability to finish from different angles. He's just really comfortable. That's something I saw in high school, that he's just very composed when he gets into traffic. Like when he gets into the lane and he's got defenders around him, he just doesn't panic. He's able to stay on balance and body control and everything, and just a great finisher around the basket. Joey said it's kind of opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how you feel about where the position is going to end when Sincere is dribbling the ball and kind of tried to create something. Now he's been able to have success when even it looks a little dicey. And then when Jaden is just so, like, you already think about him as a veteran. You think about him as someone that has been around for a long time because he is never sped up too much. He is able to just make it look so smooth and get into the lane seemingly at will. So that's been great. But yeah, he could use the 3-point shot to come back a little bit 0 for 4 today.
Ty Rodgers conference play, Derek, 15% offensive rebound percentage, 21 defense. To steal a Brad Underwood overused word, that's elite. He's unbelievable on the glass. All right, thank you to everybody for watching on our YouTube Live. Appreciate all you guys. If you can give us a like on there, subscribe to it. You can get all our videos up here. We got all the post-game videos on our YouTube. And check out our conversation with Darren Williams. Always great catching up with a guy who at one point in his career, Derek, was having a Hall of Fame case at some point during his career. Now he's into MMA. He was in golf for a while. but he's a former wrestler. I asked him why he got in MMA. He says, stay in shape, man. And I think he's just uber competitive dude. So anytime you can get somebody like that back in your arena, Manny Jackson, who's huge, obviously in the basketball world, and Harlem Globetrotters, everything he's done, that's a good thing for this program. Like Coleman even said, I asked him about it after the game, he was, I didn't even know growing up that Darren Williams went to Illinois. So the fact that that's on the broadcast, the fact that you got some more guys in the NBA, like I would assume, maybe a couple more in a year, that's always good to get those guys back around the program.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a guy that's played on a Team USA team, and the fact that he's got some staying power as far as like relevancy, as far as like across the nation. People know who Darren Williams is, and when you can sell him, when you have him at your game and everything, that's a big deal. And well, they have a picture of him up probably in a Illini uniform. Let's get a picture of him punching Frank Gore in the face up somewhere. Like how he won that fight. He won that fight. I don't know how he did, but
don't mess with Darren. That's what I would say.
No, I mean, I remember having some conversations back like late middle school into high school that, hey, D Will's better than Chris Paul. I haven't really peddled those narratives too much lately, but those Jazz years, and I know maybe very early Nets, he was awesome.
Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to say good things about LeBron, but that's another amazing things about LeBron. Like he's doing this for like 6 years after Darren retired, and he was drafted 2 years before Darren. I know he's probably 1 year younger, but Chris Paul doing what he's doing at his age, and now he gets Kevin Durant to play with. That's insane. Like the fact that he's been doing this for this long, and then Chris Paul is going to turn him right into a head coach. But Darren Williams got it figured out. I think he's just enjoying his life away from the basketball. Say he barely watches basketball now.
I know he's big into golf and MMA. I think are his two passions. He's living a good life.
You mentioned it though. People like know Darren Williams when they mention him. I wanted to look up basketball reference similarity scores through their careers. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Stephon Marbury, Tim Hardaway, Derek Harper, Mookie Blaylock. Those are all kind of guys that like maybe not Hall of Fame careers, but multiple All-Stars went on to do obviously great things in the NBA. I told Derek it'd be 30 minutes. This was 40. It's kind of what we do here. But appreciate all you guys for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a rating review wherever you get podcasts. We got plenty of content coming up at Illini Inquirer. I got a Super Bowl preview story that has an Illini angle. Caught up with Darren Williams. Derek will have player grades. We'll also do Joey's news story on Dane Danger as well, with all the discussion we've had about him today. But everybody take care of each other. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Derek, who you got?
Chiefs.
Yeah.
They're the underdog. I'm taking Mahomes, though.
Yeah. It's really hard to go against Mahomes, isn't it? Brad Underwood said 31-24. I'll just be different. I'll go with Austin Berkland's Eagles, even though I don't want to see Austin Berkland tweeting about his Eagles. I'll go high scoring, though. I'm going to go Eagles 31, Chiefs 28.
It's got a chance to be a really fun Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I love the matchup.
These are two teams. Like if it was this and Eagles and Bengals or whoever, the last four were all great teams. And I'm just glad we don't have to see fourth string San Francisco quarterback in the Super Bowl. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care of each other. Enjoy the Super Bowl parties. We'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer podcast.